Hi there, welcome to another doodle with me with Ms. Cooper. Today this one is a watercolor doodle, but you could also do this with ink. The whole point of this doodle of little daisies here is to practice with your round brush and having control over your brush strokes and being really careful about how you place them on the paper. So I will show you how to do this kind of daisy shape and how to do small leaves. So I'll flip this over. Now the first thing you need when you're practicing some control with your brush is a place for all of your petals to connect on your flowers. So I'm going to just make a spot of bright yellow that will help me figure out where I want to put my petals. So I will brighten that up just a little bit more, and I'll add some orange so you can see super well. Here we go. Oh, that's much easier to see. So I will round that out very carefully. Now the point of this doodle is not necessarily to make realistic looking daisies, but really it's just to get you used to being very careful with the brush. So what we're going to do is I'm going to switch to some blue because that stands out really well. I'm going to rinse out my brush, wipe it off on my rag, and now I will pick up some blue paint with my brush slightly wet. Now to do these petals, we're going to use 3 strokes. So we're going to start at the middle with our brush nice and pointy. So we're going to go 1 stroke out, 2 to connect the daisy, and then a 3rd one to seal up that little space in between our brush strokes. So let's do that again. We have 1 to grow the petal, 2 to round it out, and 3 to close it. So you'll notice I'm being very careful about my brush strokes. I'm going really slowly, and it's making them all consistent. This is good for when you have something where all of your shapes are consistent, kind of like a daisy with their daisy petals. When you're just trying to get the idea of a daisy, they're generally going to be very similar. So I'm practicing these little 1, 2, 3 motions. And I'm keeping them very close because I have all this control over my brush, so I can keep all these petals very close without them actually touching. I will add just a few more because you saw an example of a perfectly round, very complete daisy where we just saw the front, but sometimes you might want to do a little variation on that and just do the sides of the daisy. And that will help me show you how to do the leaves. I'll just add 1 more petal in here. Keep these petals really close together here. 3 to kind of round it out. So now I'll show you how to do leaves to go along with your daisy. So I'm going to start by making sure I've cleaned out my brush nice and dry, no extra wet paint in there. I'm going to make a stem. I'm just using colors straight from my palette because this is just me having fun, relaxing, and doodling. So with a bit of green paint on my brush, I'm going to just add a stem, and I'll make it really thin and delicate because that's the style that we've been painting in for this doodle. So I have a little thin stem, and I'm going to repeat that same motion I used on the petals on the leaves. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I missed a little bit right there, so I'll go back in and grab that. Let's do that again on the other side here. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice I'm keeping my first 2 strokes a little farther apart to make my leaves slightly wider. And I'm also pressing harder. When I was doing my daisy strokes, I was doing something kind of like this where I'm getting thin little strokes. I'm not pressing very hard, but for the leaves, I'm actually pressing into the paper a little harder. You can see it widens. It's a little less even because that's kind of how leaves are. Sometimes, I'll curl this one even farther. Sometimes our leaves kind of bend a little bit. So you could always add that onto your leaves. I'll complete this little section of leaves right here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And something you can add at the end is you can remove all that water from your brush, go in with your dry paint and dry brush a couple last details into your leaves to give them some texture. Now I did a dry brush on a wet part of my paint so it blends in just a little bit. That's the goal here, is to make nice smooth leaves to match your style. Sometimes it's fun to take your daisy center and change the shape a little bit. So maybe you only see a little bit of it. Maybe it goes to a little point or it's a little blob. And you put the petals around it. So maybe instead you would like to maybe do a daisy kind of more at the end of the season where the petals are kind of drooping a little bit. So I still did 3 strokes, but I put a little bit more of a curve to it. I got 1, 2, 3, and I'm filling them out. This works better when you have a little bit more water on your brush. Let's go 1, 2, 3, and I'm curving my petals a little more. So this might be something else that you like. 1, 2, I'll just kind of make my 3rd stroke this end here. But doing that little kind of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to yourself can help slow you down and make you a little more intentional about how you use your brush when you paint. It's very easy to quickly fill up your page with a lot of flowers. So have fun with this. Remember, sometimes little leaves and branches stick out in the middle. If I were to try to complete this scene, I would probably add some leaves in the middle just to make it interesting. Page full of perfect round daisies might not be as exciting, but if I add a couple leaves and some stems in there, that could make this a much more interesting picture to look at. So maybe I'll add a stem and leaves in there, make these a little more interesting to look at. Maybe I'll add some other leaves underneath this one. 1, 2, 3 here. I'll curve the end of this leaf. Add a stem, and maybe you'll develop a whole bunch of flowers in a big bundle. Maybe you'll put them in a vase, maybe you'll turn it, and they'll be laying off the edge of a table. It's up to you. With that, though, I hope you enjoy painting your lovely flowers.